Welcome into episode 202. Be sure you're following us on Twitter at BaileyJAdams22, at by CA Simmons, at Night Sports Now, and at Pegasus Podcast. Before we get into all the transfer portal drama, madness, all that stuff, a bit of, I guess, breaking news came out that has been news that UCF allegedly knew about for 4 months now, I guess it would have been, surrounding KJ Jefferson. I don't know how this even came out. It was like if somebody, I don't even know who that account was. It was an Arkansas account, right?
Some
That
Arkansas
had,
fan account posted the, I guess, mugshot, and
yeah.
the information and all that.
So KJ was booked in Arkansas, and nobody really knew what it was because all it said on there was, I think it just said, what is it, general misdemeanor or something like that.
Yep.
Anyway, we get the explanation for this is from Brandon Helwig of Rivals. Everybody knows who Brandon is. It says via a source, KJ Jefferson was ticketed for speeding/reckless driving in the Fayetteville area in May 2023. So that's last May. The level of speeding was such that it escalated to a misdemeanor and not a regular traffic ticket. The charge was not processed until he moved to Orlando to enroll at UCF. KJ has been in communication with law enforcement and it was mutually agreed upon that he would return to Arkansas after UCF's spring game in order to face the charges, so that's why he was booked today. Don't have all the details, but this is just the beginning of a formal process, which will include a plea agreement and community service. UCF has been aware of this and knew this would come out at some point this week. This will not impact his status at UCF. And then Brandon follows that up with a statement from Gus Malzahn that says, I have been fully aware of the situation that took place in May 2023 prior to his arrival at UCF. Since KJ has been here, he's been a great leader and an exemplary member of our program. So not as bad as it looked like when I guess the thing first surfaced because no one knew what it was. I don't know. I mean, there's not a lot to say about it, I guess. But
I mean, any legal situation is obviously a serious situation, but when you see news break via Twitter screenshot that your team's quarterback has been arrested, there are definitely worse ways it can go than a speeding ticket, I guess essentially is what this was. Yeah, I don't know. Like you said, there's not a ton to say. It was a scary half hour or so when no one really knew what was going on, and that was just out there. One of my bigger questions is, so UCF knew about this, according to Brandon, since he's been here.
And according to Gus.
And according to Gus. That's right. Gus Malzahn said in his now released statement, or sort of released, because so far only Brandon Helwig has it, that they did in fact know about this. It's little things like this with UCF that I don't understand. I don't know why they let that become a Twitter storm if they already knew about it and presumably knew the timing of when this was going to drop. I feel like that was unfortunate because this has become a thing. And the way social media works is that everyone sees the first version, not everyone sees the final version, right? I mean, there are multiple national college football accounts just running with right now. UCF's quarterback has been arrested. What did he do? What happens next? And the resolution's just never going to get carried out to all those people. So I'm confused as to why, from UCF's perspective, you would take what ended up being more than an hour to give a statement to anyone over something that you've known for months was coming, and apparently even knew it was coming now. I don't get that, but yeah, it definitely could have been a much worse situation. So I guess we're just, which I don't want to like make light of speeding. Really shouldn't do that at all, particularly not, what would that have been, like 30, 40 miles over the speed limit? That's not great.
Probably, yeah.
But yeah, I feel like we were definitely all in probably more of a panic mode an hour ago than we are now.
KJ has also weighed in.
Yeah, that was a decision.
It looks like he's in traffic behind a car, and it says the devil is busy. I think he's referring to like the actual devil. I don't think he's calling himself the devil. He's referring to the devil trying to get out to get him. And also,
he's also
Kobe
playing
Hudson
a song called Devils.
I didn't even notice that part.
Yeah.
Kobe Hudson also weighed in before. Kobe Hudson was the first person to weigh in, actually.
So for a situation that UCF has known about since they landed KJ, somehow their star wide receiver released a statement before they did.
And he said, y'all stop all that KJ slander. That's old stuff that is getting handled. Y'all will do and say anything to try to make somebody look bad. It's sad. Which, I mean, the first part of that is like, yeah, it is an old thing he's getting handled. Like that, we should have, I guess, taken that, and I kind of did when he posted that. I was like, all right, I guess it's not that bad.
Wouldn't it be fun? I also have to point out that, again, like an hour before UCF released a statement, SJ Tui, who runs UCF's NIL collective, replied with the up arrow to Kobe's tweet. Again, before any official reaction from UCF on something they knew about. I'm just laughing in my head at the concept of what if what Kobe tweeted was basically like what Gus had released. It's like, we have an official statement from Gus Malzahn. Stop the KJ slander.
Oh, yeah. The other thing people are pointing out about that is, like, in the booking, it says he's 6'3", 266 pounds, where UCF has him listed at, what you think he said, 240?
I think he's in the 240s on UCF's website.
So I don't know. I guess something to monitor.
Which one of the stranger information things, period, is comparing a player's weight from when they were arrested to what they're listed on UCF's roster. But yeah, I don't know. You can
very big for a quarterback. But I mean, I don't know. We've known for all this time that he's a tank, so I don't know. If it doesn't affect him, it doesn't affect him, and he's just going to be even harder to tackle. I'm sure he'll trim some of that off in the summer and into fall camp and stuff. But that was basically one of the more things people were like pointing out, that more than the fact that he got arrested. They were like, the real thing that we're worried about here is 266, and just like, well, let's wait and see what
it's
the
funny
charge is.
because it's one of those, like, you have to be like a really, like hardcore sports fan, but that's definitely one of the things, right? Of like, what does a college football team say a player's height and weight is versus what it really is? Like, I remember with Milton all the time. I think UCF had Milton listed at 6 foot.
Yeah.
Or something like that. And the running joke was always like, if you ever like actually measured him, he's got to be like 5'8" or something. So it's just kind of another funny example of how that always happens.
I saw someone else say that NFL teams aren't even going to have to start like having these guys measure it at the combine and stuff. They'll just start to get their height and weight from their police bookings, which is horrible.
That is terrible. My gosh.
But it is. I mean, it's one of those, like, the few times you'll actually get a real height and weight from someone outside of like sports, because those roster heights and weights are hilarious. But
don't need any more. Hopefully this is the last this podcast has to talk about police bookings anytime soon.
I imagine it would be. Well, that. I was gonna say this is probably the last time we'll talk about this too, because there's, again, like what they said,
I don't foresee there needing any more updates on this. Yeah.
Community hours, and he'll do that, and it'll be taken care of. So,
and I think Brandon Helwig had implied in one of his tweets that this was something that maybe the Arkansas PD, I think, am I right? He said something in a tweet about that maybe this was sat on for a little bit, basically just because that's how it kind of works in these SEC towns.
It was agreed, I guess, that he could come back after the spring game to face the booking and all that, and it happened last year, so last May. But I mean, we can probably leave it there, and then, like I said, it's been a busy week. The transfer portal opened, so we've had some outgoings, we've had some interest, we've had all these rumors that I'm tired of people tweeting eyeball emojis about instead of.
We got to stop.
I'll quote JP Gilbert live on the podcast: "Bring back shame." People need to stop doing that.
There are people who know stuff, and then there are people who I know don't know stuff, and then also start tweeting. Like, it spreads like a disease, and then suddenly I go on the timeline, it's just nothing but people tweeting weird emojis and stuff, and I've had enough of it. And then I feel bad because there's obviously, and I don't know how many of you, if this describes your listening to the fan base, there's a good chunk of UCF Twitter that's casual fans, right? They have a Twitter account to follow UCF stuff, and they're just like, oh my God, what's happening? I've seen 9 eyeballs. Like, should I be afraid? And I'm like, I'm not even sure any of the eyeballs know what they're talking about. I think everyone's just tweeting emojis.
We have this podcast, and if you didn't have the information that you have, I wouldn't know what's going on either. Like, I would be like,
but a lot of the times nothing's going on. Like, I'll go on Twitter and there is nothing happening, and I'll see someone be like, oh, you have no idea what's about to happen. Nothing's about to happen. Like, there's nothing. It's just,
y'all just wait on it.
The other thing fans have to figure out at some point about the spring portal deadline is that it is not nearly as that. I'm going to knock on wood when I say this, because you never know with UCF, but it's typically not nearly as big of a deal as the end of fall deadline. This is most of the guys nationally who've entered the portal, and it's been a ton of people. Now that you can transfer multiple times, but the vast majority of them have just been largely guys, like most of the guys we've seen leave UCF, right? It's people who are not going to get the playing time they're expecting or looking for a different situation. It's not like end of season portal window where like all the superstars are moving and things are crazy. So it's just, it's just basically not as big of a deal.
Guys not happy with their current situations and feel like, all right, I want to go somewhere that's going to be a better situation for me come fall, which you can't fault. I mean, that's the way college football works now. So the outgoings we've seen so far, I don't even know if this is an exhaustive list. These are the ones that I've seen. I think the ones that have been reported on.
This is all of
Nikai Martinez, Timmy McClain, Goldie Lawrence, and Stephen Martin. Of all of those, obviously the big one was Nikai. It spells doom for me in the recruit draft that we did, I guess almost 3 years ago now.
Yeah.
Because now all of my recruits that I drafted in that draft that we had are all gone.
And this is the final year of the bet too. So for newer listeners, well, which I guess we just did this a few months ago, so you probably heard it, but just as a refresher, each offseason, Bailey and I draft UCF's latest recruiting class in a 3-year rolling bet for who will have the better draft class after those guys have played for 3 years. And we bet a steak dinner for this first one. And you took Tommy Castellanos, Jordan McDonald, and Nikai Martinez. There's a decent shot that you just took 3 Boston College players. We'll see where Nikai lands. And I took Xavier Townsend, Damari Henderson, and former UCF wide receiver legend Quan Lee. So I We're going to put it up to a vote on Twitter at the end of the season, so you guys could technically all still vote for Bailey and his 3 absentee players and give him the win.
If
But
you
it's looking
decide you
good for
don't
me.
like Christian,
You just
like
decide
me
you
better.
hate me, which I know some of you do. This is your chance to take it out. It is crazy. I never would have guessed, and part of it is just because the portal was still kind of new back then. But the idea of that first draft, we took 6 players and 4 of them are gone through what?
Yeah.
2 seasons. Through 2 seasons,
Yeah.
4 are gone. That's crazy. And the other two are starters and very good players. It's like very, very different ends of the spectrum.
And we don't have to linger on this draft, but what I was going to say is I still, like, looking back, I'm not going to fault for myself for my draft strategy there. Like, I felt like at the time that seemed like 3 very good picks.
I took Damari Henderson over Jakari Henderson because he weighed 1 pound more. That was my justification. Yep. Damari Henderson is a star in the making for UCF, and we have barely seen Jakari Henderson due to some injury issues. So there was no science that went into this. It was just what we felt at the time.
Yeah, so Nakai gone. So we saw that. We obviously knew Timmy was going to be gone.
Yeah.
And then Goldie Lawrence and Steven Martin, 2 like lower depth chart wide receivers. Probably looking for playing time somewhere else. I don't know. Is there anything else we need to say about Nakai? Because I feel like that one, I mean, I guess one stuff kind of started trickling out, like it made more sense, but like that kind of came out of nowhere for me.
Where I was like, really caught off guard.
He was going to be a contributor, is like, I mean, even
more than a contributor. I mean, he was going to be a starter.
Yeah.
I think that, well, and now, of course, it's been reported that maybe he wasn't, maybe that contributed to him leaving. I don't know. I do think that UCF fans have to get out of the mindset a little bit of, I don't like when anytime anything bad happens for UCF, it just gets spun about, well, it doesn't matter. It's like there are layers to these things. Something can happen and it's not horrible for UCF, but it's also not great. Nakai Martinez was obviously going to be in the mix at safety. I know they've got Damari there. They've got Brian Threats now, who had a really good spring. They've got Quadrant Bullard. So it's like they're still fine at safety, but you want depth there, and you still lost depth. Like, this is a guy who was going to play a lot, presumably, whether he was going to whether he was going to be out there, maybe not for every snap or maybe as a full-time starter, but it's still lost depth. And the bigger thing for me, and this is more of a morale thing, or I don't know. Nakai was the first hometown hero. He was the first player who, really was branded that way and kind of kicked off this movement of all these top Orlando area players being interested in staying home and actually coming to UCF. So, and it's not like his UCF career was a failure. He played a lot in 2 years, but it's just, it just kind of sucks to see one of the hometown hero guys leave,
Right. And I mean, I really grew, and this was part of it was I drafted, but like I grew to really like him and really enjoy like watching him play. And I was really excited to see that, this guy's a hometown hero, and was going to be, I thought it would be about to be going on to a 3rd year of being a contributor for his hometown team. Like, that's just a cool story. But
like I said, I was assuming I thought he had star potential this year. And I'm very curious to see where he ends up. I think we all remember Tommy Castellanos literally attempting to poach him on the portal via Twitter.
I actually forgot about that until you said that. Until you said, I drafted 3 future Boston College players, and
so we'll see. But wouldn't that be funny? I don't even know how you describe that at that point. Of 3 different former, sort of highly rated or highly regarded UCF players end up at Boston College.
Yeah. And then obviously Timmy McClain was the other big one that we knew was going to happen, and I think the fact that it still became a big thing on Twitter just because of some of his former high school coaches, or maybe one of his former high school coaches.
No, there
became
were a couple.
A thing of, were there a couple? Okay.
Yep.
And I know I saw one that was going back and forth, and I don't know. There was just a lot
Here's
of
the thing about Timmy McClain. Here's the thing.
Biased.
I don't think there's a point in this podcast saying any more about why Timmy transferred or how he would have fit in the quarterback room. We've been talking about that. I forgot he was on the roster 2 months ago because we just moved on because we knew that he would be transferring after spring. This was the most telegraphed transfer ever. His dad had tweeted like 2 months ago that he was going to transfer or something. Do
you remember the tweet?
Is what it is.
The tweet we put on the Pegasus Podcast account when they got KJ, because you sent you posted a screenshot of our texts, and it was the day they got KJ, and I said, so when does Timmy transfer? And you were like 3, and I was like, or you said like 3 something. I was like, 3 weeks, and you're like, no, 3 o'clock today or something like that. So it was, once they got KJ, it was a known thing where we were like, yeah, he's gone, which made sense.
Yeah. And so what's more interesting about it, honestly, is the Seminole high school relationship, because that's what's more of a concern to me, because that is a very important relationship. It's one that Josh Heupel's staff effectively burned to the ground, which caused problems. And it's one that Malzahn's staff worked really hard to repair. And if Twitter's to be believed, kind of ruined again over Timmy leaving. And it rubs me the wrong way because, look, if you I don't want to get overly critical because I just want everyone to be happy. And I don't want any players to not have successful careers. I'm not over here rooting on the downfall of anyone because these
Yeah.
are kids trying to achieve the dreams of their life. But just at the end of the day, there are only so many spots and there are winners and losers in college football. And Timmy transferred in to UCF, gave him a power four home at a time when he entered the portal coming from USF where he hadn't won the job. He walked into a quarterback room that at that time featured John Rice Plumlee, Mikey Keene, and Tommy Castellanos. The fact that he ever started games, period, for UCF is kind of a miracle. And
Hmm.
to get this whole where some of the Seminole coaches are twisting it on social media, and one of them flat out said that he played better than KJ this spring, which like
How would you know?
some of spring practice was open. Media got to see spring, and even if you could somehow convince yourself to believe that, it's patently false. You can see that it wasn't true. Media saw that. I don't know why they're burning a relationship over this because I don't know why you would ever expect UCF, which is a Power Four program, a multi-million-dollar organization with a lot on the line, to basically say that they're not going to do everything they can to upgrade, that they're not going to do everything they can. I mean, once a quarterback of KJ's caliber was interested in UCF, that was the ball game. That was
Yeah.
it. And I just, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that from UCF's perspective.
And what kind of bothers me about this whole situation is like everybody knew he was going to transfer. There was no, it wasn't a quarterback competition. There was never going to be that. Like that to even bring that up made no sense. And like
Yeah.
when he transferred, I was like, man, I really hope, and I still do. I really hope he finds a home where I can watch him play, and he's a fun quarterback to watch.
Yep.
And I hope he has all the success in the world. It's just the Seminole coaches, their reaction to it, and with the kind of war of words they've gotten into on Twitter, just it's a bad look. I just feel it just leaves a sour taste in my mouth, and it's not Timmy's fault. It's
Yeah.
Seminole
It
coach's
also
fault.
has potentially long ranging implications because again, that's a very important high school relationship. And like I said, I don't know what UCF did wrong here. You could argue that, oh, maybe they didn't have a quarterback competition between him and John Rice, which is true. They didn't, but we saw both them last year and John Rice was better.
Yeah,
So I don't know. I can understand being and like I said, part of this is that, and this is just the way it is. Truly every single college football player believes that they are destined to be a starter or a star or something along those lines. And that's fine. That belief is what fuels them. It's what helps make them great. But I've just seen so many times over the years. Now, I'm not even really talking about Timmy here. It's because it's more as coaches, but it's just there's this sort of belief that nothing that could have gone wrong could have ever been on you. It's always whenever it's a player who's transferring from UCF because they're not playing or a player who's coming in, it's always that staff screwed me. It's never just, hey, I was at this position and there were some much better players than me also at
yeah,
that position. And that's life. That's reality. I hate that we just keep having to do this dance, particularly when it's apparently going to mess up a high school relationship.
yeah. And we'll see. I don't know. We'll see if it does. I know it part of that is probably just emotional tweeting. Like
Yeah, that's very
that
true too.
happens. It's in the moment, and I don't know that. And we'll see. And if it does impact the relationship, like that is kind of insane, honestly.
I agree. I very much agree.
But
I
we'll
understood
see.
it with Heupel when they had really good players in UCF's
Yeah.
backyard and he was refusing to recruit them or even give them the time of day. That's
Mhm.
relationship burning worthy. Just, hey, we took a quarterback from your school and there ended up being a better option in the portal. I don't know what we're doing at that point.
Right. So yeah, we'll see. But okay, all of that. I don't know if there's anything else to say about the outgoing guys, but we saw some kind of positions where they've sent out some offers and some interest they have. A few players in particular, two of them DBs. One of them being Ohio State DB Cedric Hawkins, who they were interested in. I think the first time around when he got recruited, when he ended up going to Alabama, or no, that was Fegans. Sorry,
Yep, that's
he's a Cocoa
Vegans.
product. Fegans is the one from USC. Originally went to Alabama. UCF was recruiting him back then, and then when he hopped in the portal and then ended up at USC, UCF was interested in him there. They're recruiting his younger brother right now for 2025, Anquan. Anquan, sorry, I'm getting him mixed up for some reason. Anquan Fegans. Um, so two DBs, which I guess is no surprise given they just lost one. And
Yep.
then given the fact that they already have ties to these guys, and we've seen this happen so many times where and that's what we talked about. The recruiting strategy is selling them on, coming and playing at home, but also like that, keeping that relationship, even if they go somewhere else, because when they hop in the portal, you already have that pre-established because of how fast all this stuff moves, and you already have this established relationship. It's not like, hey, we got to reach out to this guy and like get to know him, and like you already know this kid for however many months you recruited him, maybe even years in some cases. So with these two, like I don't know, they probably don't get both of them, I would assume. But good shot, I think, to have one of them come home.
It's kind of funny with Fegans in particular, how we used to talk about right when the portal era was starting, and Malzahn's staff, to their credit, were one of the ones to kind of trailblaze this notion, was how you don't burn bridges, right? Because you'll have another opportunity. So that's why even when they realized they weren't going to get a player out of high school, they sort of stayed on them and with the hopes it would work out down the line. Now we're on to Fegans and then you stay on them through the portal and then you try again. Like, well, this is attempt number 3 to get Traquan Fegans. And I'm just going to, I don't want to, you never know, but I hate saying this because I hate killing hype, but Fegans to me checks all the boxes for portal bust. And it's why I'm just not overly excited about the opportunity for UCF to bring him in, even though it might happen, because we've learned so much about the portal the last few years, and highly rated player goes to major program and then transfers to a different major program and now is transferring again and not having ever really played much in there. That's like number 1 on the list of players who end up as busts. I don't know. It's great to bring another body in, but I'm not sitting here saying, wow, if they land Fegans, yeah, he's going to be out there playing. I just don't know. It doesn't seem like the type of situation that results in a high level player.
Yeah. And from what I've gathered, I guess, there's a chance they could pursue both and get both, because I think Fegans plays corner and Hawkins is more of a safety. So,
also the schools that are in touch with Fegans aren't really, UCF's not up against the Blue Bloods here. It's Georgia Tech, Memphis, Mississippi State, Maryland, and Boston College. Boston College, who apparently just won't go away. We're going to have to talk about them 9 more times in this podcast.
Yeah. Should schedule a home and home with Boston College.
If we had a Boston College podcast, what would it be called? Oh, we've done this. We did this on a previous podcast. No, we didn't. We didn't. We did the Fresno State one. No, we did. I was thinking it was because I forget what it was called, but because we looked up their 247 site and the name of it sounded like, I don't know, some like political TV network to me. I don't remember what it was called now. Eagle Insider. That's right. It was Eagle Insider. Yeah, Eagle Insider. Which is a good name.
Yeah, no, I think we saw, was it the Fegans one that I think we saw the interest in him first, and we were like, why are they going after a DB? Like, I don't feel like they really need, like, they're kind of set there. And then Nakai, you're like, we need to be better about picking up on this kind of stuff. Because
so that morning, I texted you the Fegans news, and I said, I'm confused why UCF's going after a DB. And you said, yeah, that is odd. Like, I forget, I said, you brought up Chasen. You were like, maybe they're not comfortable starting a freshman? I don't know. And I said, yeah maybe. And then an hour later, Nakai's like headed out, and I just texted you, and I'm like, we gotta put the context clues together better. We really do, but
yeah. But then I told you, I was like, we maybe should have known that someone was leaving, but I still wouldn't have put that being Nakai. I would not have been like, oh yeah.
I probably would have jumped to like Quadric, or I wouldn't even really necessarily jump to either of them, because like you said, Fegans is more of a corner. So either way. Cedric Hawkins, the Ohio State safety, who was very highly rated out of high school, is a more interesting one to me. And I think I'm even less interested in him himself than the high school. Apparently, this is the high school relationship podcast, and that's because he is a Coco.
That sounds really weird.
Alum?
The high school relationship podcast.
Oh, God. Yeah, it doesn't sound great.
All the tea.
But yeah, is alum the right word when I'm talking about high school? Can you be an alum of a high school? Okay, I wasn't sure how that worked.
Yeah.
Why are you looking at me like I'm crazy? I thought alum was a college thing.
No, I don't think so. I think it's everything. You can be an alum of your elementary school.
Can I be an alum of a job? You said anything? Can I be an alum of anything?
No, I think it's a school term. I'll look up you want me to look up the definition? We're gonna do that on the podcast.
Okay, go for it.
Alumni.
I always thought it was just a college thing, to be honest with you. I didn't think you could.
Okay. Well, a graduate or former student of a particular school, college, or university. So school, if it's a school,
it is a school. Yeah, it is a school. Okay. Anyway.
Okay. Sorry, I'm wrong. It does say a former member of a group, company, or organization. So yeah.
So it's anything.
I guess that makes sense, because we always, and I don't know if it was just a thing, we always refer to people like who used to work at Pewter Report as Pewter Report alums.
What episode is this for our podcast?
202.
So I want us every week, like I am currently an episode 201 alum. And then next week I want to talk about how an episode 202 alum. And we're just going to do that all the way through the rest of the podcast.
But the episode isn't a school, college, university, group, company, or organization.
Oh, damn, that's right. Okay, I screwed up immediately. All right, anyway, this was all to say
this is out of 202 episodes, this is probably like maybe the 5th or 6th time we've looked up the definition of a word on this podcast, I think. But
I bet we're at double digits on that by now,
you think so?
To be honest.
All right.
Probably. Nothing's ever going to top looking up what was that weird school whose mascot we were looking up, like Tufts or something?
Yeah, the Jumbos.
The Jumbos. I forgot what it was when I brought it up. But anyway,
Coco.
Cedric Hawkins, Coco. So that's why I'm very, very curious about UCF's possible connection there. A, because he could be really good. He's transferring out of Ohio State, and I was reading up on why, and it looks like there wasn't really he was a highly rated player, but there just already wasn't really a path to the field for him there. They had just landed a very, very, very good superstar safety out of the portal this fall, and a couple of the other younger safeties had kind of surpassed him. So listen, start not being able to crack Ohio State's depth chart does not mean you're not a very good player. It's Ohio State. They might win the national championship this year. They might have the best roster in college football. So I'm not thinking he's just some washout. He could be really good, but it's the relationship with Coco, which turns out a ton of really good players, all of whom to some degree may have interest in UCF. And Javon Boggs, very highly rated wide receiver, number 193 player in the country, straight up quote tweeted the Cedric Hawkins news and said, "Where are we going?" and added Cedric Hawkins. So UCF landing him would be huge just because of the connections there. Maybe that helps trading Seminole for Coco. It's like a soul for a soul.
Maybe it is. I like that his Instagram is at rockout.said. That's really cool. I like
Rockout said. That is a good Instagram. Beats Bailey J. Adams 22.
Okay. That's not even my Instagram, so joke's on you. He played safety and wide receiver at Coco, so I guess that would make sense because wait, what position does Boggs play?
Wide receiver.
Yeah, so I guess that makes sense. They might have been in the same receiver room, so they'd be friends. Yeah, no, I mean the high, again, we keep talking about the high school relationship, but getting Coco would be huge. Are there any Coco players already on the roster? I feel like for some reason there has to be, but maybe there's not.
I'm sure there are.
The other player we've seen, I don't want to say like directly or heavily linked to UCF, but we saw a post from, I forget the guy's name now. It was somebody from Rivals, not Brandon Hellwig. It was another Brandon. Post about an offensive lineman from Arkansas, Andrew Chambly. And obviously you think Arkansas and you think KJ Jefferson. So this guy was a SEC freshman All-American last year. Looks like he played tackle, which again, coming out of the spring game, I was saying on the spring game pod, or even before the spring game pod, I was like, I don't know if they have enough depth at tackle. And I think, an SEC freshman All-American from last year probably comes in and starts at tackle. So there haven't been any direct links other than UCF's. I guess he's heard from UCF was what the report was. But it's dumb that I don't know anything about any of these players that jump in the portal, but sometimes I just decide I need him to play for UCF, and he's one of them.
Yeah, I look, by the way, no Coco players on the roster. 7 Seminole players though, so relationship's still a little bit imbalanced. I hope they don't all transfer.
They're going to be
transfer in solidarity with Timmy. Yeah, that'd be unfortunate.
Yeah.
I'm interested in this one because, as we talked about, I think that tackle is definitely a need for UCF, and something that the issue with offensive line is it's genuinely, seriously, maybe the hardest position to address in the portal, because just not a lot of O linemen transfer, and a lot of the ones who do are just transferring to try to play somewhere and aren't always necessarily particularly good. So this is kind of a rare opportunity of someone who, A, has some form of a connection with UCF through KJ, and B, seemingly would be able to actually step in and start. Now, the issue is that we don't know how connected UCF is. On3 had an update with him and listed quite a few schools that he's talking about taking visits to, and UCF was not on the list. So I don't know how in it UCF is, but it's worth monitoring. That'd be a coup for them if they could get in there.
What's funny is you think about, Arkansas, they have that connection. What if he doesn't like KJ?
That's true. I don't know. I also just kind of assume that whenever Brandon in particular posts something, because he was the one who made that connection, I just assume that, you put more weight to it. But yeah, it could be true. He could actually hate KJ.
Not want to play with him again.
And not want to be anywhere near him.
But no, and this is where we can kind of get into part of the portal discussion, where it's what positions do we think they should probably target the heaviest after spring? And I even going into the spring game itself, was thinking offensive tackle and just maybe offensive line in general. Because I'm not sure how much depth they have. Some young depth, I think, on the interior at center and at guard a little bit, but I think they could. You can't, and we found this out last year. The number of combinations they ran with that were all ended up being good. I don't want them to have to do that many combinations again, but if they had to, it would be nice if they had some good depth. I'm not 100% sure they have the guys right now to run that kind of combination game again.
I agree. It's kind of funny, and maybe I'm way overreacting to a spring game, although I don't think I am, but I've just decided that O-line is my concern. That's what I'm worried about now, which is dumb because they also probably need 2 wide receivers, but I don't know. The thing about college football and football in general, really, that always freaks me out is you can do so much right, and if you screw up the lines, you're just dead in the water right away. So I'm just the concept of them and it's not even necessarily where the line's at now, but you do look at tackle in particular, and okay, we're 4 or 5 games in the season and an injury hits or 2 injury hits. What happens then? I mean, who's out there? So I feel like they have to do something there. Wide receivers, the other big one. There really isn't. We talked about, and we thought we were getting it with DB until Nakai transferred. In past off seasons, there's been one position they randomly start targeting, and we go, oh, I guess they're weak there. And we didn't realize they're kind of the offers that have gone out so far are pretty much what we were expecting. We kind of knew that they needed another offensive lineman. We kind of knew that they were interested in adding to the wide receiver room.
Have they sent out offers on wide receivers? Am I missing? Because I don't know that I don't know if I've seen any public ones, which I feel like they should. But
this is the part of the podcast where I have to remember what's public and what's not.
Okay, well then let's just skip over it. They should be targeting wide receivers, and if they are, then great. If they're not,
yeah, get on that, UCF. Why aren't you targeting any wide receivers?
And then outside of that, like it's like I feel like I don't know. There are gonna be other positions that I feel like they'll probably have to address. I just don't know, like outside the box, like you just talked about, like they just start targeting a player at a position where you wouldn't have thought. Like maybe running back, but I doubt it. Like they have 2 highly rated freshman running backs coming in. They have RJ Harvey, they have Miles Montgomery, they have Johnny Richardson. Even if, say Johnny Richardson transferred, like I think they'd probably be fine rolling in with RJ and Miles and then having the 2 freshmen behind them. Because Gus doesn't rotate running backs like past UCF coaches used to. So
I don't think
I don't know.
Because it is true. And like I said, part of what I'm trying to think about stuff through is also the lens of depth. It's not just what you have, but what happens if someone gets hurt.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know what Miles Montgomery has. He's just kind of okay, can I say the wide receiver thing's public? So can I say it?
Okay, yeah.
They brought in Javarius Johnson, Auburn wide receiver, for a visit last week, who was a really solid wide receiver at Auburn and would probably be able to come in and just pretty much fill that need. So
I think I did, because you sent me that. I missed it on this outline because it happened last week, and anything that happened last week was
I'm reading. We had a whole text conversation about it. So
yeah, that makes sense. Well then good. I hope, hopefully, because when you look at, we're kind of bouncing around here, but when you go back to wide receiver, it's like they have Kobe, they have Xavier Townsend, and then after that it was like we're talking about Burdell Richardson. We had a couple guys stand out in the spring game. Like you never really know. And even if those guys, even if you're 4 deep, like you'd like to be 5, 6 deep.
Yeah. Which the thing about Burdell is I don't feel great about the idea of having to start a true freshman. He can be awesome as a true freshman, but it's just, that's a lot to ask of a player that young, especially a receiver. I mean, he can go on to be an amazing wide receiver for UCF, and he might be just good and a bit inconsistent as a freshman because it's kind of the upper ceiling of what you can expect from him. So I don't know. They have to add someone, and that Auburn transfer in particular would just be perfect. I mean, he had really good. I can pull it up really quickly, but this isn't some guy who's just been bouncing around at Auburn this year. He had 19 catches for 347 yards and 3 touchdowns. Year prior in 2022, 26 catches for 493 yards and 3 touchdowns. That's a solid wide receiver 3. That's a guy that can just step in, take that role, and we don't have to keep worrying about this.
It's like, I mean, it's a little bit different because I think Kobe was their leading receiver, but it's like when they got Kobe where you kind of knew, like, all right, like this guy is going to come in and produce.
Yeah,
he's already had some production at an SEC school like Auburn. So yeah,
it's also hilarious that this is going to be Gus's 4th season as UCF's head coach, and we're still somehow managing to hit up the Auburn pipeline every now and then.
Yeah, I'm wondering, like, you have to do it on a case-by-case basis, but how many of these players, is it all still just pre-existing relationships with him as recruiting them to Auburn?
This guy was at Auburn while Gus was there. Was at Auburn while Gus was there.
Because pretty soon they'll be past that window. Be.
Which it's so funny. I was telling you about this. I don't think we talked about on the podcast last week, but Kobe Hudson and the other one, RJ Harvey, went on the Andy Staples show, and he interviewed them and was talking to them about. It was really good. I think we did, because I brought up the whole RJ Harvey John Rice Plumlee thing. Has that happened since our last podcast?
Think so. I don't remember now.
If I didn't, I apologize, because you don't know what I'm talking about. But Kobe when Andy was interviewing Kobe, he's talking about, oh, why'd you pick UCF? Like, what do you think about the school? And Kobe loves Gus, was just so effusive in how much he loves playing for him, and how when, he said when he entered the portal, how a lot of schools expressed interest, but he was just in the portal to get back to Gus. And it was just very interesting because I don't know. It wasn't necessarily a surprise, but it was just, I think we forget there were so many stories coming out of Auburn, how much those players liked Gus when he was there. And it was just kind of funny how UCF's, when you just look at, I mean, you talk about Kobe Hudson, like, oh yeah, they got a receiver. That is a hit of all hits through the portal, to have a 3-year high level starter. That is not easy to find anywhere except high school. And he brought in some Lee Hunter, Some really,
Yeah.
really important players came in through that Auburn pipeline.
Yeah. And I think so. Why we talk about wide receiver, we talk about O line. I think maybe the other one that I would probably pick out would be like defensive end.
Oh,
They,
yeah, I
they
forgot that one.
probably
Absolutely.
could
Absolutely.
use some more depth there. Because I don't think you really know what you have outside of the top two or three guys. But I mean, other than that, it would just be like any other ones could just be, oh, that's a surprising one. Like they
Yeah.
go out and get, I don't think they'd go out and get another tight end, would they?
Actually, I
Um,
don't think so. I'm actually surprised that we haven't seen any defensive end offers, which they might just not either missed or just not public yet. Because you're right, I do think they absolutely have to go after
yeah,
something there.
yeah. And we'll see. All this stuff it all moves really fast. I mean, I don't know. You know better than I do when the window actually closes for people to jump in the portal, right? I
Couple
mean,
weeks, I
it
think.
kind of, like the thing is it closes, but then like you can leave really at any time if you graduated. That's
Yeah, if
the
you're a
bar,
grad,
isn't
I don't
it?
even know what
So
the hell the rules are now. The courts have like thrown out everything. I was listening
yeah,
to the Athletics Until Saturday feed did a podcast about the portal opening last week, and their portal authority guy Max Olson, who covers all the portal stuff for them, opened it with, okay, just so you understand where things are, it is the Wild West. There are no rules. Anyone can transfer anytime they want. NIL is allowed to be pay for play, and the NCAA can't say anything about it. Portal, like there just are
yeah.
absolutely no rules at this point, so it's hard to keep track. Just I was talking to you a little bit about this week. Is that and you were expressing some frustration because you were talking about how, from a content perspective, the whole saying is the portal giveth and the portal taketh
Yeah.
away. It's especially true for content because it provides way more content. Pre NIL, like basically everything pre 2021 before NIL and the portal became big things. Like college football just went dead for 8 months. There was nothing. And that would suck if you had a podcast, because really, just what are you going to talk about for all that time? And now it's like there's always something to talk about and there's always new things happening. But the flip side is, if you're more of a casual fan, I definitely don't blame you. I'm basically turning listeners away at this point. I definitely don't blame you if you fall into that camp of just tell me who's on the roster in August, because it can be kind of
Yeah.
exhausting. I mean, I know that more regulation is coming and that'll be a thing. We're still probably at the earliest 1 to 2 years away from that being in place, where it's schools can just directly negotiate with players and sign contracts. Everyone knows that's coming. It's just how soon. But
Hmm.
I get the frustration. I do, of just, the we can podcast for 3 months about spring ball and who's going to be here, whatever, and then suddenly guys hop in the portal and nothing we said stands. Which luckily that hasn't happened so far. But I get the fans who would just rather basically take it year by year and up, season's coming up. Let's start finding out who's on the roster if we're going to be good this year or whatever.
And I have like I've said the same thing in recent days where it's like I almost wish I could just be like, just I'll figure it out. We'll all figure it out by the time the season gets here. But as someone who has a podcast that has to talk about this stuff weekly, it's like, no, I have to follow it more. But
You've
it
seemed
really
very
is.
close to. You've seemed very frustrated with the portal this last week.
It just is a lot. It's a lot because then you get some of the stuff like doesn't even happen and like you kind of freak out for no reason. But it's still like it's a lot to keep up with, and I will. It's not. It's gonna happen where I probably get to fall, and we're probably talking about something, and then I forget that they got added the guy through the portal, or I forget that somebody left because it's just there's so much to keep up with, and it is a lot. But
Could be worse. There
uh,
could still be realignment.
yeah, I guess. But I mean, I almost added, and we'll get to the news like in a little bit. I don't know if how much more portal stuff we have, but um, that the whole proposed Super League thing, like if that starts to
Yeah.
become a real thing,
It's not
then there will be more of that talk.
So to be clear, the whole Super League thing, which we talked about a few podcasts ago, absolutely not happening.
Yeah.
Obviously, but the fact that it got to the point that it was actually presented to conferences, and it has real backing behind it. I mean, Roger Goodell's number two at the NFL is behind this. Several university presidents are behind this. A lot of the big firms that work in college football are behind this. Like, this was a real grown up serious thing that was proposed. And what I've read from the Athletic and Dellinger and everyone was that while this form of it isn't going to happen, a lot of the ideas that were proposed as part of this thing might. So it's worth considering for that. But if you don't know what we're talking about, it was this Super League proposal to completely blow up college football and basically start from scratch. And they present it to the conferences of taking the top 70 teams and putting them into 7 10-team leagues. And the team that wins each league automatically goes to a 16-team playoff. And then also the best of the what basically would be group of 5 teams also goes to the playoff. And then there's 8 at-large spots. It was like perfect. It makes
Mm.
sense. It keeps things even. But I forget who it was. Someone got a hold of the actual confidential pitch deck, which had the proposed new conferences. And UCF's conference is something, man. It was the Southeast Conference. It would have been Clemson, Duke, Florida, Florida State, Miami, NC State, North Carolina, South Carolina, Wake Forest, and UCF. That'd be fun.
Sounds like a lot of fun. Too bad
And
it's not going to
UCF,
happen.
think of all the frequent flyer miles they would lose, though. They would never be traveling anywhere but North Carolina. It's literally only Florida, South Carolina, and North Carolina schools would be in that conference. And it's unfortunate that it's not going to happen. And again, it's your side of it, right? Because of course this splits up the SEC and Big Ten, and SEC and Big Ten fans are like, "How could you ever? What are we doing if we're not playing Indiana every year or whatever the hell?" But what's going to be interesting for those fans to realize, especially Big Ten fans, is you're in an 18-team league with 4 West Coast teams. You're not going to be playing those teams as much anymore anyway.
Yeah.
There's going to be teams you share a league with that you're just not going to see. But yeah, it's, it'll be curious to see what ideas from that kind of take off a little bit and do get molded into college football, but the big reorganization is not happening.
Yeah. I know I steered us into that conversation, but I need to go back real quick to the portal stuff because there was I missed this, or I didn't miss it. We've talked about it yesterday, but again, so much to keep up with that I can't keep it all straight in my head. They have offered a defensive lineman who I believe is a defensive end from Rutgers, Renee Conga. They gave him an offer.
Oh, that's right.
Yesterday.
Okay.
So I knew we as you said that, I was like,
this, man.
We talked about it, but I couldn't think of. I was like, and then again, it becomes one of those things where it's like, is this public? Is it not? No, it was definitely public. He tweeted about it, so I had to go back and figure that out and find it because I knew that there was one that they had at least offered, and
it's dizzying, man.
A sack in each of the last 2 years of Rutgers. I don't know that he's played a ton. Don't know a ton about him, but yeah, I think they'll probably do well to add a defensive end, at least for depth.
Yeah, I think they need to. It's so funny. It's just there is so much to keep track of with this portal stuff. It just feels dizzying.
And technically, the portal's only been open officially for 2 days now, right?
Yeah,
or 3 days.
It opened on Tuesday.
Monday.
Open on Tuesday. This is day 2.
And then
Isn't
how
it
many?
fun?
It was
Aren't we having fun?
Like a few hours in, like 90 players had already entered, I think, or something like that.
It took until I believe it was by lunchtime. The number of players who entered through the entire spring portal first day had already entered. Like it's well over 100 now. It's been a ton of guys.
Yeah. So it's a lot.
I actually saw a stat that in the last 2 portal cycles, like the spring one and this previous fall one, I think it was 19% of all FBS players have entered the portal at some point, which is crazy.
It's just the reality of college football now and college athletics. Anything else portal wise?
Yes, one more thing really quickly. It is April 17th, 2024. We just did an entire podcast about UCF's needs into an upcoming season, and we did not have to bring up linebacker once.
Feels good, doesn't it?
We made it.
It's funny. It feels good, and then we'll get to the season,
and they're terrible.
We probably should have been talking about it a little bit more, but I'm ready to kind of just give them the trust and be like, all right, let's go out and figure it out. Let's do it.
Me too.
Hopefully it all works out. But let's get into football news. A few things to get through. A 3-star tight end, Caden Pining. Is that how you say that, Pining? It's UCF over the weekend. He had a top 10 that included Florida, Louisville, Michigan State, Arkansas, Virginia Tech, Pittsburgh, Virginia, Stanford, and Illinois, and UCF, obviously. So he committed to UCF. That was the day of the spring game, I think, wasn't it? Or was it the day after?
Day after, I think.
I believe it was the day after. But yeah, and they had a ton of recruits there for that Knights versus not spring game. So good recruiting weekend to have that. Big 12 Media Days set for July 9th and 10th in Las Vegas. UCF is with the group that will be on July 10th, which I think I like because we'll get like the more build up for it. We'll get the first day where we get to watch all the press conferences and stuff and be like, all right, UCF's tomorrow. So that'll be.
I'm just going to air a grievance with you while we're here because I really wanted to go to Big 12 Media Days this year. Because I thought it'd be fun, and you just won't even entertain the idea, and I'm really
because I have to save up to buy you a steak dinner for
shut up. Draft. You could buy me the steak dinner in Vegas.
No, do we have to talk about this on the podcast?
No, we don't. I'm just mad about it. I think it's better if you don't give a reason, so then it just looks like I am justified, even though I'm really not. So we'll just roll with that.
Okay, cool. And then last piece of news, a little bit of sad news. Former UCF AD Steve Sloan died at 79 years old this week. He was UCF's AD from 93 to 02. Really drove UCF's move to Division I. Obviously, and he also just was like a big college football figure in general. Former quarterback and national champion, I believe. And was kind of all over the map with college football. So sad news. But 79 is a pretty long life. So
I think he's as of now UCF's longest tenured AD too. I don't think anyone else has had that job 9 years.
Yeah. I mean,
pretty crazy.
I wonder. That has to be right, I think.
Yeah. Oversaw obviously a very, very pivotal time. Few folks can say that they were ADs taking a program up to FBS. So
Yeah. All right, we'll move into game of the week, which is a good chance for us to talk about what UCF softball has been doing lately. They're 25
Yeah,
and
man.
15, 10 and 8 in the Big 12. They've turned it around in a big way lately. They're at Baylor this weekend. Baylor's 22 and 17, 5 and 13 in the Big 12. Games on Friday at 7:30, Saturday at 3, and Sunday at 1. They've won, what is it, 9 in a row now? Or I think they're 10 and 1
They've won 9 in a row.
Since Coach Bear posted that tweet about kind of sticking together. And to be fair, I mean, the to turn it around the way they have has been good because at a certain point I was like, I know it's a tougher conference, but I was like, I don't think they're gonna make it to the tournament this year. And bracketology comes out today on D1 softball, and Eric Lopez does a great job with that. And UCF was penciled in there as a 2 seed right now, just because they've gotten, I mean, the benefit of all of the, I think the bad vibes had come around back-to-back series where they played Oklahoma State and Texas, who were just dominant programs. And
Yeah.
they've been able to kind of get back on track here in the last few weeks and have really, I think they're, what are they, fifth in the conference, but they're comfortably fifth. And with another good weekend this weekend, they might jump Kansas for fourth. So playing good ball, and it's nice.
I'll admit it, I'd kind of written them off. They got off to that slow start, and I was just like, they might be a couple years away here. I don't know. It was really unfortunate, especially since we're used to them being so dominant. But my God, 9 wins in a row. I mean, I know, as you said, the schedule has absolutely gotten easier, but still, they've rallied. That is
Yeah.
beyond impressive.
I'm trying to pull it up here real quick because bracketology was interesting where, yeah, they were projected to be in the Gainesville regional with Florida, the number 1 seed, who would be 15th overall national seed. UCF as the 2 seed, FAU as the 3 seed, and Villanova as the 4 seed. FAU is leading the AAC right now. I believe they're playing actually right now. UCF and FAU are playing. Um, Last I can see, and this is going to mean nothing to you all listening to this a day later,
It's
but
like, why even say it?
yeah, UCF's up 1-0 in the bottom of the fourth as of this tweet, or as of
So
this tweet.
congrats to UCF on their win over FAU. A little bit of time travel.
Why would you tempt it?
They've won 10 in a row. Huge accomplishment.
Right.
Shout out to UCF softball and the coaching staff.
Yeah, but just kind of awesome to see them kind of turn around and have hope for postseason. Same thing with baseball, is like they had a rough week last week, but still kind of in the mix for a regional and everything. So it's gonna be a fun last couple months here of the 2023-2024 sports calendar in college. So with all that, time for tweet of the week.
Tweet of the week. Well, could have gone a lot of ways this week.
Well,
I don't know why I
like
for the
I like that.
could have gone a lot of ways this week. I didn't really want to go. I feel like I've been in a bad habit of giving tweet of the week to people we actually like, but unfortunately it's going to have to happen again this week because some tweets are just that bad. And this week it's going to Clay Pasco, who, you may know of if you've been on UCF Twitter. We were talking with him before the spring game. Good guy. Not a good tweet though. He tweeted earlier today, I'm going to say it, I'm not really a fan of all of UCF's uniform variants. I think we should combine the Pegasus and Night Mode jerseys and stick with those as our home. Keep the gold helmets, maybe switch up helmets every once in a while, and then we stick with gold, occasionally black helmet, white jersey, black pants for our away. This was like my first I'm an angry old man moment, because not okay with anything in that tweet. And he's getting ratioed, so I feel okay about it. But I just have to, for some of the younger fan base who have known nothing but UCF being dressed well, we got to talk about how things used to be. In 2007, Bailey, in 2007, I was a young child. I was 10 years old, and UCF unveiled a new white helmet. It had the Stack UCF on the side. It was the first time the Stack UCF had been on the helmet, because back then it was a new logo, traditional stripe down the front. Very nice helmet. Looked cool. They wore that helmet every single game for the next 89 games and 6 straight years. Then they broke that 89 game streak by wearing a very bad black helmet that they unveiled in the worst way possible, that the fan base did not like, and that George O'Leary after the game said they would be burying. They then wore that white helmet for 27 more straight games after that, and 2 straight years. When UCF wore their new gold helmets against Maryland in 2016, it was their first time wearing gold helmets in 10 years. When they later in that season went on to wear a black helmet in 2 games instead of just 1, it was the first time they'd worn black helmets in multiple games since 1994. We've done the boring uniform thing. It's not fun. Within a season, you would hate it. And I have to say, UCF, it's kind of funny how the fan base is all over the place. I think a lot of the fan base's complaints with the uniforms now would be that they're not doing enough variation, that they've scaled back from where they were a few years ago. They've got 3 helmets, 4 jerseys, 4 pants right now. I know at their peak it was 4 helmets, 6 jerseys, 5 or 6 pants. I think was
Yeah, I
probably what
think
they were
so.
at by like 2019. So they've scaled back, and bring back Peter will die on that hill for the rest of my life. But yeah, it's okay to not be traditional. UCF's not a traditional school. I keep the cool uniforms rolling.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sitting here and we talk about uniforms all the time on this podcast. And for the visual or for the YouTube viewers, like I have the drip U, poster over my shoulder, and behind my head I have all these different helmets they've worn. I'm not really interested in them going back to, more basics. That does not
Me
sound
neither.
appealing to me. So,
It's also just
um,
less of a thing. I mean, there are very few programs that only wear a couple combos. I mean, even some of the traditional programs, Ohio State will wear an alternate at least once a year. Florida wore a blackout last year. I mean, it's just not much of a thing. The whole traditional, here's three looks.
Now I have two things to say because I think one, Clay, you deserve this ratio. Two, I'm almost wondering if he just big brained this move and knew tweeting this about uniforms would get him tweet of the week. I don't
That would
know.
upset me because I've worked very hard. I hope that wasn't the case. I've worked very hard over the years we've done this podcast to avoid that because people have tried to bait me into tweet of the week before, and I've always avoided it to my knowledge. So if that happened, I'll be
Yeah.
sad. But what can you do?
Hopefully not. But all right. Yeah, that's just a bad tweet, bad take. Let's get out of here. We'll get out of here right now before someone else breaks the podcast and enters the transfer portal out of nowhere that we got to spend another 10, 20 minutes on. So, because it could happen at any minute, but hopefully it doesn't. We'll be out here. We'll be back next week with episode 203. Until then, you can find us on Twitter at Bailey J. Adams 22, at by CA Simmons, at Night Sports Now, and at Pegasus Podcast. Thank you guys so much for being with us, and we'll talk to you next week.
Bye, everybody.